Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I let us run on a little bit late on the starting time because we had lots of people still coming in. So at this time, the clock says 10:07, and it is September 22nd of 2018. This is the special member meeting for the month of September. We will call it to order. Let's do a roll call. Where's our roll call? Our secretary. Okay.
President Jake Krakowski.
Here.
Vice President Mark O'Neill. Absent. Treasurer Greg Armstrong. Secretary James Tucker is present. Kurt Kaminsky, Director.
Here.
Richard Robbins, present. Stella Diaz-Caleo. I didn't see Stella. Okay, we have 4 out of 7. That's a quorum.
Okay, good. We have a forum. Let's conduct business. All right. We have some helpful folks here, or ladies, and they're going to take a little time to discuss Helco, which I might say has done, from my standpoint, our background, has done a very good job. Welcome, Red.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me without the microphone?
Yeah.
You're okay? I'll do it without. I kind of have like a megaphone mouth. Sorry. But good morning. It's really good to see all of you here, and I think it's a really good sign that they had to bring out extra chairs. So good job, everyone. I did want to also introduce the team that's here with me in the back, standing up. Susan Lee. In the pink shirt, and Val Canadelli. So we're here today to give you a little bit of an update, but we're also here to help you if you have any questions or any concerns about your electricity, about your account. So we'll be here for a little while and we can help you. But basically, let's see, we've been in Leilani restoring power for a few weeks now, and it's good to know that we've got over 100, I don't have the exact count. Yesterday was 112 people were reconnected. Today it's a little bit more. We have people that were reconnected in the area that was de-energized due to the lava. And it's just been a crazy few months for all of you. I do really want to say we really appreciate your patience with us as we work to get everything cleaned up. We had to go in, we had to do damage assessments to find out what was going on there when the lava was erupting and all kinds of things were flying through the air. Then we had to clean up broken poles. We had lines down on the ground. We had other equipment like transformers on the ground. We had to clean all of that up. And then we had to go in and repair everything so that we could get all of your power back on. So it's been interesting. That's one thing, you know, I was born and raised here on this island. So living on Hawaii Island is interesting because we have all kinds of interesting natural disasters that we have to deal with. It's nice to see that we bounce back. So let's see, what else do I want to talk about? Your bills. So that's something that's been weighing heavy on people's minds. What happened with my electric bill? So back when the eruption started in May, we stopped billing for the area in Leilani Estates. And we knew that you had a lot of other things on your mind. We didn't want you to worry about your electric bill. So we stopped billing, but we are now going to start sending out bills. Yeah. My for most of you, I think it was April. So if you were out of your house for that whole time and just recently moved back in, your bill should be very small. One of the things we did is we did an adjustment, so we took away there's a basic customer charge. We did a courtesy adjustment, and we moved that for that period that you were out of your homes. Some of you have been living there the whole time, and so your bill might be a little large. I don't want you to worry about that because it might be difficult to pay all of it off at one time. We're here to help you, so if you need a payment arrangement, come and see us. We'll be here, or you can call us. We have waived the interest fees and the late payment fees through the end of the year, and we're not going to make collection calls through the end of the year. So just wanted you to know that. Why is that important for you to know? Unfortunately, we have some people in the world that are not too nice, right? They're called scammers. Yeah, I know. So what happens, and what we've seen is when we have these natural disasters, for some reason the scammers just come out of the woodwork and they try to get something from people who are unsuspecting. I want you guys to know we're not making collection calls. So if you get a phone call saying you owe us $500 and if you don't pay us right now, we're going to come and turn off your power, that's not us. That's not us calling. Okay? Even if the number says Hawaii Electric Light, because people are able to spoof numbers. You know, on your caller ID, it might say Hawaii Electric Light, but it's not us calling. So what I do want you to do though, if you do get a call like that, first of all, hang up and then call our customer service line to verify whether or not that call came from us. And if it is a collection call, it shouldn't be from us because we're not making collection calls through the end of the year. So, important number to remember, our customer service line is 969-6999. And let's see, is there anything else I should talk about?
Commander,
Yes.
geothermal, what's good with them guys?
Okay, so geothermal is currently not producing power,
You know that, huh?
right? And I don't know the status of where they're at in trying to restart their plant. But even if they were to restart their plant, we couldn't take power from them anyway, not today, because there's no connection. No kidding, the plant's surrounded by lava, so.
Right there, okay?
Yeah, but I don't know their status.
Okay, well,
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Any plans to make a large solar array for the Big Island?
That is a really good question. So the question is there plans to make a large solar array for the Big Island? So earlier this year, I think it was back in February, we sent out a request for proposals, or what we call an RFP, for additional renewable energy. And I cannot speak to the status of where that RFP is and what the proposed projects are. But it could include solar arrays. I don't know. So it's a possibility. Yes.
The other day they were digging a hole at the end of Cuckoo Street.
What street?
Cuckoo Street.
Okay.
And they were digging a hole, so they were putting a hole in it. But then it looks like they put the gravel back in. I don't know if they dig a hole first and do it like that, then dig it like that.
Okay, so normally when we dig holes
Yeah.
to plant our poles, we are not going to fill it back up again. But we do, if we're not ready to put our pole in,
has come in and disconnected us from the pole. Now we have to deal with the county to get your engineers to allow us to get hooked up to the pole to get service to our power box.
So we want to talk to you after this.
Okay.
Okay, but let me explain the situation. So when the county decided that they were going to lift the mandatory evacuation orders for this area, they went in and the county Department of Public Works went in and assessed the electrical connections for all the homes that were accessible. There are some homes to this day still not accessible, they haven't been assessed. And when they went around, they found some homes that we can't make connections to yet because there's something wrong. There's, it's unsafe to make the electrical connections. In some cases, you might have to hire an electrician to fix the problem. In some cases, work with us. We've also gone out and we've taken a look at what the issues are for those areas that we could get to. So after this meeting, if you wouldn't mind, come talk to us and we'll see where you're at.
Remind me, ma'am.
Oh, I'll get right back to you. Yes.
Some of the residents, including myself, have solar panels. Are we going to receive the credit we've been generating all this time for the last 4 months?
Okay, okay, so the question is, some have solar panels where you were connected to electricity, or you in the
No, I'm
de-energized
connected to
zone?
the electricity. My bill is $20 a month.
Okay, I am not sure, maybe you can see us after, you can answer that question, or you can call our customer service number.
There's plenty of people in there that have solar panels. I just wanted to ask on behalf of everybody.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not sure. I'll have to find out, and we'll get back to you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have no red on meter on the 12th, and it still hasn't showed up on the web page as a bill. And every month before that, I was sending them pictures of the bill. And I called yesterday and asked them when it would show up, and they said they would get back to me, and let me know, but no return call, and I'm wondering how long it's going to take to show up so that it will be paid.
That's a good question. So what we have done is, as we're reading the meters and we're generating the bills, we are individually reviewing every single bill to make sure it's accurate. Remember, I talked about we're not doing late payments, interest fees. We've did a courtesy adjustment for the electric charge. So we're reviewing them, so it does take a little bit longer to get those bills out. We're sending out about 25 a day. So at some point, you'll get yours. Yes, sir.
What's the status of getting smart meters so you don't have to come to the house?
Okay, so that's our grid modernization program. We haven't rolled out smart meters yet.
Do we want them?
That's a whole other subject.
Yeah. Another subject, and we should get someone smarter than me to talk to you about it. Good answer. Yes.
I have a automatic payment for Helco.
Right.
Now, once you determine what my amount is, 500,000, will that be a one-shot deduction?
And I'm glad you asked the question. So the question is, she has automatic bill payment, and when she gets her bill, will she get just that one time that full bill will be taken out? So I forgot to say that. We've actually also suspended automatic bill payment through the end of the year. So this will help you, if you want to work with us on a payment plan and pay just so much every month, we're not going to go in and grab the whole amount.
But I can authorize it.
You can authorize it. Just work with us. And then if you want to see a Lily in the picture, she can help you with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Oh, one more question here. Yes.
Yes, since June went down, okay, is my bill gonna go up?
Yes.
I mean, Big time?
No, not big, but we did release information about that back in June, July timeframe. So for the average customer uses about 500 kilowatt hours a month. So the bill adjustment was under $2 a month for that person because of no GFL. But I guess that's relative. $2 could be a lot for some people.
Beer. Okay.
Maybe half of
Cheap
your
beer.
entities.
Yeah. Cheap beer. What are they?
Okay, so if you
Thank
have
you very
any
much, Heather.
questions, we'll be outside for about an hour or so. Please come see us. Thank you, everyone.
Maria, thank you so much. Very good presentation. All right, next we're going to let Mike talk for a spell.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Garbarino, the attorney that's been retained by the LCA board to assist with legal questions and related issues through the recovery of the neighborhood. I had a couple of interesting meetings since the last general membership meeting, and I learned a lot. I want to explain quickly that my background is I was a government lawyer for years in Texas before moving here to Hawaii about 7 years ago. I own property near you guys. I have 3 acres right at the top of Kamagiri Road, the road that goes down to Ibuka at the 15-mile mark. And so I'm your neighbor. And professionally, my background is as a lawyer and having operated and co-owned a real estate appraisal business here on the Big Island for the last 6 years. I bring that experience to the table in regard to many of the issues that the neighborhood is facing. And I make some of the recommendations that I've been making and have been offering some suggested discussions for the community to engage in because of that background. I want to give a little bit more context because I didn't really fully, I think, explain it in the prior meetings. The perspective I'm bringing to the equation, although I do represent the LCA through its board, is that of the neighborhood. Leilani is one subdivision according to local law. All right? It is established via plat maps, via lot numbers, via designations, TMK, parcel IDs. Look it up in the county records. It is one subdivision. From a real estate appraiser's perspective, they're going to look at it as one subdivision in doing appraisals, and then they look at market differences if there are differences within the subdivision. What I learned recently, and I want to thank the members of the both Section 1 and Section 2 who are here, who have educated me in the last couple of weeks about some of the history and some of the background, because it's been truly inspiring to understand at a deeper level some of the questions that I had when I started researching the legal status of the properties within Leilani. And essentially, as you were all aware, but I wasn't fully aware of, only to some degree from the appraisal perspective, is there's a difference between what we're referring to as Section 1 and Section 2. That's going to be discussed in more detail here on the agenda a little bit further down, so I'm not going to go into any detail in this introductory discussion, other than to explain that there is a difference in the legal status. The folks in Section 1 own their lot, and they don't own anything else. The remaining common land of that part of the subdivision actually legally is still in the hands of the bank and the successor to the original bank. By contrast, Section 2, all of that commonly owned area was turned over by the developer to the Community Association, the LCA. And so that land is owned by all of you who live in Section 2. And if you look on your deed for your property, you will see that in addition to what is legally described as your lot, there is also a legal description of all of that commonly owned land that you are an equal co-owner of, along with all the rest of your neighbors. So that difference in legal status is important because as we proceed down the road of discussing possibilities with respect to you all coming together, and perhaps even ultimately under a single association, which I actually recommend. There is a lot of detail underneath that. And there's a great deal of history, I have learned, between the areas, and that we'll, again, get into a little more history when we get to that point. Okay. So with that background in mind, my loyalty, my client is the LCA. That is my obligation as an attorney. Should any issues arise in which there is a conflict, a potential conflict of interest between the other party I'm engaging with and the LCA, I'm going to advise them accordingly. I'm going to say, I can't act as your lawyer in this matter. However, if you want a lawyer, I recommend, and I can recommend good lawyers I know of. Because I want to make sure that you all understand I'm here to answer your legal questions. I'm here to advocate for you if your particular issue or question is in alignment with the board's direction that they're giving you for the LCA. When there's no conflict, I can advocate for everyone. If there is a conflict, then that's where we'll disclose that, and you'll then know whether you're speaking to me as an attorney here to help you potentially in your interests versus, well, my primary interests are LCA, and to the extent yours are different, you should have a legal counsel, okay? Because there's a lot of complicated conversations under that that I think will be coming in the future. Finally, I want to make sure we understand the context in which we're dealing right now, and with respect to how the association runs and the bylaws. The local authorities only just now, moments ago in fact, have begun to surrender their authority and turn it over to the neighborhood. We all have our opinions and can criticize or not the way in which the local authorities handled the disaster. But the bottom line is, they're now at the point that they're withdrawing. And they have in effect requested of the board, and thereby requested of the neighborhood, that you guys step up and take over your affairs, and the sooner the better. They want help. They don't want to be at the barricade, at the entrance anymore, screening who's coming and going. They want you guys to take over your neighborhood. Now, they want that to happen as soon as possible. The contract that they signed for the private security service to take over the monitoring instead of the police department there at the entrance is a 3-week contract that I made an inquiry with the mayor's office yesterday to determine, is that subject to renewal, or is that how much time we have? So to get clarification on that in order to keep the board informed so that they can act accordingly. What I wanted to explain about the bylaws is they allow the board, your elected board, on your behalf to make decisions in an emergency situation in order to protect the interests of the neighborhood. Now those decisions are temporary in nature in that the bylaws further provide that to the extent they would constitute a substantial change in, for example, CC&Rs, or for that matter, the way in which the bylaws themselves operate, then that's a situation where it needs to be brought to the membership for approval. It may be something that requires a vote. Up until this point, your board has been acting under emergency authority in any situation where they've had to make a call because the authorities, without preparing us ahead of time, without giving us any advance notice, said, hey, heads up. And that's what happened with respect to the police withdrawing from the monitoring and the security service being put in. We were not asked, we were told, and they had to act accordingly. So I want to make sure everyone understands the context in which decisions that have been made by this board up to this point has been that of emergency authority, which is always intended to be temporary, and in which the decision expires, because it actually, anything further beyond that requires the membership approval through the bylaw process. That's the path we're on. That is the path we're on. I learned through social media and through attending meetings since the last membership meeting that folks were assuming that these emergency decisions were long-term decisions and were being made without member input or without input of all stakeholders. I want to assure you, as a lawyer, I'd be committing malpractice if I let this board do that. So that is not what's happening. But there are situations where, you as a neighborhood have to make a decision as an association, and there's no time to do it through the normal process. The bylaws contemplate that, and they have this process in place for how it's done. The board has acted according to those requirements. And as we move forward, we'll be doing everything through membership approval, etc. Okay? Beyond that, the further detail we'll get into as we get to that part of the meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to try to address a couple of things. Unfortunately, Mike Palanio is working today. He's been put on 7-day a week. It doesn't rain too much. Greg had an emergency problem with a dog and headed for hemo back about 9 o'clock or earlier. So I'm going to have to fill in for several. Also, we were going to have Andy Andrews make some presentation of things he's been doing. He's now in Mexico.
Good for him.
I think I should have followed him. So, let's see. And my time in preparation for this has been scattered, as we, like many of you, have gotten back into the restricted zone. So we're now trying to make a home again. What a mess. We're working in several areas, and most of which are covered under the old business. I might just kind of lap into that a little bit, since I don't have any hardcore great things to say to anyone. Mike has covered, our attorney, has covered the situation with Leilani Avenue with regards to us getting control of the county, from the county. I had intended to also contact the Postal Service this week for an update on when and how are we going to get our home delivery back. I ran out of a week before I got a chance to do that, and in just a little preliminary discussion with Mike a few minutes ago, between us we determined that our best approach there may be for him to write the higher authorities in the Postal Service, representing us more in a legal aspect of, well, here are the various different regulations that would mandate the return home delivery to us. This would be more understood by them than probably our local postmaster. So, yeah, this is a good step forward. My first and last interaction with our local postmaster did not leave us in a very friendly mode. So we're going to circumvent that using Mike. Security and gating, we're researching deeply. Mark has gotten some quotations for gate creation or fabrication and I'll jump into kind of some of Andy's, his research. He's talked with a number of gate manufacturers around the country and has found out that we have no unique problems that haven't already been solved with our situation here in Leilani. Therefore, we get to kind of pick and choose the different pieces of the puzzle that we want to put together. He also found out there are basically 4 pieces involved in putting together a gate system for a gated community. One being the physical gates themselves, and sensibility says we get those fabricated here because we do it on the mainland, we don't have that close a relationship, and we have to pay to ship it, and it takes a long time. Probably we don't have a long time. So we get the gates built here. We have a current quotation that Michael Howley gave me the day before yesterday from one potential vendor. Seems to me it was in the range of $12,000 to $16,000 for a pair of gates. And this will vary depending upon the width, and I think he had 16-foot gates quoted. We perhaps can buy the 14s. Part of this decision will be made based upon design of how we're going to do it, which is based upon where it's going to be, and we do not have final decision on that at all. The next part of a gate system is the actual mechanical open and closing. Amounts to some motors, power, some backup power, pistons or gears, whichever, depending on the type of gate. Whether it's a swing gate, a slide gate, or a lift gate. And I don't know myself, I like to see it operate fast, and to me that says make dual gates that swing as the fastest. We'll have to play with that based upon costs. All these ideas are still in research, if you will. The next system involved in this interfaces the mechanical drive to the outside world. Do you use a keypad? Do you use your phone? Do you use however? That's a fairly fixed thing in this day and age. If I remember, the research was saying in the range of $4,000 to $5,000. The final system, which really is what places the convenience in the hands of us users, is mostly done online and is actually only $1,500 or $2,000, but does have a monthly fee, depending upon how automated you wish to have it work, and each individual can choose, in fact, how they want to have it. We're looking in the direction of a system that could be activated by just the presence of your cell phone in your car. Automatically, as you drive up, the gate opens because it knows your phone. Another alternative might be a little transducer that you buy for $20 or $25, stick on your car, and it does the same thing. Sensing system at the gate. So so-and-so lives on such and such a street, opens the gate, in you come. It's also going to record when you come. And it'll probably record when you go. For going, it's just tripping a sensor, the gate opens, you move out, and it closes. Of course, we want gates to close as fast as possible to keep somebody else, especially coming in right behind you. Then we get into the cloud control of it all. Since all of this now in this day and age resides on the cloud, and changes and updates are all automatically done. It doesn't even really require an app or anything on your phone to interface with it. It's per se a website that you log into. If you're going to have family visiting from the mainland, log on, list who it is and when they're coming and when they'll be leaving. It will produce a code which you give to your visitors, and that code is ineffective either before the start time or after the start time, but during the time they're there, they can go in and out freely. Of course, if they give the code to someone else, then it's going to detect that. You can't have one come out and then a second one with the same code come out. If you have visitors with more than one car, then each visitor with a car would need to have a code to make it operate properly. Again, it's pretty foolproof for those without cell phones, the transducer, or at worst case, you could issue a code, they could go poke it in on the little keypad, and they come. If you're going to have workers, you can set the time that they're going to come in, the time that they're going to leave, get a code for them. If they're going to be coming 5 days a week, you can stretch it out with the time frame. It gets to be pretty automatic. This would be shall we say, an alternate security measure to our current security company, and probably take less time. Now, for people, let's say that you have coming in that have not been given authorization, they can call you, and you can, if you know them, invite them in. Keeping in mind, this will all be recorded, so that if someone wants to invite in tourists, they're going to get trapped at the gate because it will know the difference. So that's kind of the situation there. Where the gate will go will totally depend upon our arrangements as we progress with the county, hoping that they decide to make a decision about giving us control of Leilani Avenue before they pull security. We may face a period of time in between. I don't know about this, whether we can get the county to extend the contract. Mike is going to be working on that. At worst case, LCA will actually have to step in and keep them there until we've got a functional gating system. I have a question, Doc. Go ahead.
Yes, I have two questions. Is it a foregone conclusion that we are assuming control of Leilani Avenue? And two, is it a foregone conclusion that we are going to have a gate system?
At this point, I don't think it could be called a foregone conclusion on either. Yeah, Mike, we'll turn to Mike.
Always a good idea to get the lawyer to answer that has legal implications.
Yeah.
No, the answer is no. It's not a foregone conclusion with respect to either. The specific decisions that the board has made under its emergency authority have included some bold decisions. And let me tell you, to the extent you might have some feelings of resentment or animosity that they would dare to go into these areas without first getting a member vote, blame me for that. Blame me for that, because this is based on legal advice and recommendations that I gave to the board when they initially engaged me to help you guys. In terms of context, quick context a little bit further, there's a window of opportunity for the association through FEMA to obtain assistance funds in the form of SBA loan for a 30-year at a 2% interest rate. I mean, this is like practically free money. And it's a golden opportunity that almost never arises for a subdivision. As an attorney advising you as a subdivision, as a neighborhood, you should seize this opportunity. You should seize it maybe to right some of the wrongs of the past, and maybe to make things right for everybody. And maybe there's a way to have some constructive communications towards that overarching goal. My overall goal as your lawyer is I'd like to see the subdivision recover. I'd like to see it be safe and secure. And I'd like to see your property values rise. I would like you to be a sought-after neighborhood, not a neighborhood that's avoided merely because you had a lava disaster. We live in an active lava area. We have insurance for that. The market anticipates that. There's no reason in terms of market dynamics that your property values should disappear. But if you go down a path of discord and disagreement and don't reestablish this neighborhood in a good, constructive, solution-oriented, forward-thinking way, you are at risk of losing, in some instances, folks their own life savings, everything they put to the extent that's going to home care. So I understand what that's like. I put my life savings into my property just up the road, and I felt all the feelings that I'm sure many of you who still have a home felt when this lava started, because it's right above me. So with all of that having been said, none of these decisions are final, not a single one. But in each instance, the board voted and approved to go forward and explore each of these options. And one of the things that I'd like to see come away from this meeting, there were twice in previous meetings that the campus been meeting, to have the membership agree to form committees, and through the committee process, which is what the bylaws of this association contemplate, delve into each of these issues with member participation from every member that wants to be part of that committee or wants to stay informed at that level of detail. I'd like to see that come out of this meeting in terms of the new business that you guys want to see, because I think we need that level of involvement. What this board is taking on is monumental. And yet right now, all they're authorized to do and all they've been able to do is make short-term emergency decisions. And everything else is for the future and for the membership to approve. Question?
I apologize if this is on the minutes or during business by LCA, so I'm going to bring something out. We need signage, especially, first of all, when is the food going to be prepared to move on? Second is we have signage on Leilani and Maku. So this falls into our bylaw right now, we have money to this. Signage that says, private road, no outlet, because there is no outlet now from the top of Maku to
and just for everyone else's benefit, okay, because I agree, it was for a question, I understand. What I would suggest is let's make that part of the new business and let's get that addressed specifically with Jay. It's essentially a specific repair request for a particular road and signage in the meantime, is what you just asked for.
Well, we need that signage because I don't see it anywhere.
I understand. But
And
did you have a question?
the second question was, is there's 9 of us who own homes from Alpini to the dead end. Alpini to the dead end. Alpini was the last road to the right before you went down to the when the first issue went off. There's no way. So we've been approaching putting our own barrier with a chain with a lock that we would all have key to. Because as Donna has witnessed, they are coming down already in services and walking over into her private property to access, to be able to see the lava. And it's all private property down there, and they make the way so. And so I want to know if that's capable, right? Can we put our own ecology blocks up with a chain that we have our own? We won't block anybody else off.
The question was,
Protect our property.
and I think you're within Leilani.
Yes, we are in section 2.
Okay.
And we are very precarious, no other way out, but
Gotcha,
along.
So for those who didn't hear, explanation is she and 8 other property owners are in an isolated area, section 2, where the lava otherwise doesn't allow access except in and out. And they've got looky-loos coming. They're wanting to know, can they put up their own solution, their own barrier, their own signage? I would ask that no one jump the gun on that yet if you're within section 2. Because again, you do have an association that represents you. And normally those decisions go through this governance process and get the approval of your board and of your community. And I think that's the appropriate process. However, I hear this sense of urgency about this because already, even with just a little bit of lifting of restrictions that the authorities have done, we've got people coming in, we've got looky-loos coming. And I'm seeing a lot of posts on social media and otherwise about that as well, a lot of concern. So the urgency by which there is a need to address the various neighborhood watch-related issues and access to the neighborhood issues is pretty strong. I want to suggest once again that there be a committee formed for that specific purpose, and that can be the central point through which everyone can bring the issues relating to that, so that you have a focused place to take that information, and so that the board stays fully informed of developments, right? To the extent something needs emergency approval, the board can look at it and say yes, therefore. Or perhaps the board instead, and let me give you the information, as of the last board meeting, there was an agreement and a board vote and approval to move forward with signage indicating all the areas of no trespassing, right? Among the issues raised was that the signage should be consistent with what the county is going to be putting up as signage, because we've been informed by civil defense that they may be putting their own signs up in the lava inundated areas. And I, as lawyer for the association, recommended our own signage, explaining that under the local law and the enforcement policy of the prosecutor's office, I'm a former deputy prosecutor, under their local practice, they're not going to take a trespassing case unless the property was labeled as no trespassing, even if otherwise the elements of the trespassing offense are met. So in order to protect your property rights, I made a recommendation to the board to approve signage. And Greg Armstrong, I think, noted that, however, let's make it subject to being consistent with the county records. Right? So that's where it's at this moment. So it's going to require a little further communication, coordination with the county, and then I think we can get that signage going.
Waiting for the criminal code numbers.
Right.
Signs.
Exactly. I don't know the order. Robert.
She's first. Back. She's in the back.
Oh, I'm sorry. You had your hand up. Do you mind, Robert? I'll come back right back to you. My apologies. You've had your hand up the longest, man. Please go ahead.
I just want to know if there's no tax department about reevaluating our property tax. We're all at zero.
What?
So,
We're all at zero. The we receive tax bills that stay zero for us. I want to know if anybody has spoken to the county department in reference to all they're going to reevaluate our taxes.
the question.
I talked to the deputy finance the other day, okay? Right now we're good to go. No, for a long time, okay? She says, okay?
Perfect.
You don't have been on Texas for a long time, she says.
Right, but if you don't have a tax, then you don't own anything. Are they gonna change
Now, that wouldn't be
That's
accurate.
true.
That
That's
wouldn't
true.
be accurate. The question is this, just to make sure everyone's being informed. For most everyone, it's my understanding that the county tax authority, with respect to your property taxes, has notified you that they're billing you based on a property value of zero, taking your property down to where you don't owe property taxes. That's their decision as a county taxing authority. That is not an independent professional market decision of the fair market value of your property. Do not confuse the two. They're serving a government role. Their government role is to collect property taxes. They do assessments of property values for that purpose. The assessment system they use is fundamentally different from the system that an independent real estate appraiser uses in evaluating the fair market value of your property. So do not confuse the two. It's merely for tax purposes. Now, the actual question was, when are they going to reassess? Right? The answer is, we don't know. Feel free to ask them directly. You're their customer. Ask them. Ask their customer service department. They're there to serve you. Yeah. Okay. Robert.
After the committee meets and makes a recommendation regarding the gate to the board, will the community have a chance to actually vote on that recommendation?
The question is, after the committee reaches the point of making specific recommendations to the board on the issue of securing and gating Leilani estates, will the membership have the opportunity to vote on those recommendations as part of the board's approval process? The answer is yes. My reading of the bylaws is that's a fundamental enough change to the circumstances of the neighborhood that it does require membership approval. It's beyond the scope of what the board alone can act on. Yes, sir.
All right, little carrying on further on the gate design, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You, at the board meeting, you mentioned that you're gonna purchase, somebody's property, or property. That was mentioned, possibly, you were gonna put in parking, parking areas for people. Right then and there, once you put in parking as an organization, nonprofit organization, you're gonna have to do an environmental assessment and an environmental impact statement. And the reason you're doing an environmental assessment is you have at least 3 threatened and endangered species in the area. And that's going to be required. You're going to have to get a building permit. You're going to have to get a zoning or a special use permit on the land.
Yes.
And once you do that, an EA alone will take up to a year.
We're gonna be very busy, that's
Yeah.
Right.
So
And the reason I'm saying is, I was an environmental specialist. I did that type of permitting for companies. And communities, new gated communities, they had to do those before they were built. We're already in an existing community, but once you change, put your gate in, you're going to have to worry about something like that. And your gate could probably, instead of, say $100,000 for what you're talking about doing, all of a sudden can bloom up to $500,000 for first study. You also may need a feasibility study done in that whole area, and that's something you guys got to really think about.
So the feedback that was just given was there are numerous potential legal requirements and hurdles that have to be overcome in regard to these questions surrounding security of the neighborhood. And specifically on the idea or suggestion of the association possibly buying one or more of the lots near the entrance to the subdivision so as to provide more area for the entry access, including possible parking, etc. All of these things were ideas that have been discussed and that were mentioned as updates at the last board meeting. So thank you for that detailed input. He's absolutely right. Anything that we do as an association has to be done in accordance with all the applicable legal requirements. And there will be a permitting process and possible special use permit requirements. The good news I can share is I think we've established a good relationship with the local authorities. I think that they understand that we're recovering from a disaster of historic proportions. I do understand that there's only a certain degree to which they can waive or speed up red tape because the government is. Remember, I was a government lawyer for 20 years. I know. But I also know a little bit how to push the levers, and so I'm going to keep doing that for you guys to the best of my ability. But very good feedback, very good input. And if you were willing to serve on the committee, that would be awesome because you have a lot of expertise.
Well, yeah, I would do that, except I want to be in me, and I don't have the time.
Well, and I understand that dilemma. Well, then you may just want to keep informed and give your feedback when you have time.
If somebody wants to ask me questions on that, I would be glad to help you out on that.
Perfect.
But just like I said, just the environmental assessment alone would take a year because you have to send somebody out there, do the assessment for flora and fauna, and then they have to go out monthly to check and see. And we have three, they have the Hawaiian hawk, the Hawaiian owl, and the hoary back that are all in that.
Yeah, we understand. You made your point loud and clear. Thank you very, very much. Your feedback is truly appreciated. I think gentleman back here has had his hand up the longest. How are you? The point being made is a very, very valid one, which is essentially, gentlemen in section 1. I met him the other day. He's from LA, been here a couple of years now, yeah? Great guy. Strongly advocates his viewpoint, which I love. And I'd like each of you to feel free to do that. We're here to listen and learn from each other. And he made some very valid points to me the other day that I didn't appreciate. And thank you, by the way. They included this notion that what is Section 1 or Section 2 through its LCA board doing going forward with exploring these issues that fundamentally affect Section 1 residents as well without the input of Section 1. And that's a very valid question. And, you know, the legal reason is, unfortunately, Section 1 is not organized under any kind of association. What the board did vote to do and what they, in fact, did with a couple of individuals who volunteered their help is informally reached out to individuals in Section 1 and asked for their input on how they would feel about the possibility of the two sections joining. And what I learned in detail more recently is some of those conversations maybe didn't go in a manner that would allow full information exchange back and forth yet. And so maybe some assumptions were made, and so the answers we got back might be inaccurate in section. Because the overall answers that the representatives who agreed to go and ask got back was, oh gosh, an overwhelming majority, more than 2/3 said no, no way, we're not interested, right? And I'm talking about folks who live in Section 1, right? And what I've learned since is, well, that's based on some assumptions, and those assumptions shouldn't exist, is what I'm trying to say. Because there are a variety of ways to get at this. So if I may take a moment to now explain where I'm at, having learned what I learned on this. Well, you're Section 1 as well.
That's all on you again later.
Well, it is, but we're actually up to it. That's what we're talking about now is the old business. And talk about each one.
Say that Section 1 has been really, really rude at the meetings and attacking our board, attacking our lawyer, and attacking us. If you want to be a part of this meeting, I think Section 1 needs to get together on their own and be rude to each other and not to us.
Okay.
Very good, very good.
And figure it out and then come to us in the
Okay. If I can interject.
there's a lot of passion and emotion in what she just said. And hold on, everyone, please. I'm gonna do a Robert Goldman takeover because I've seen this man guide some meetings and he's awesome. Can everyone just take a moment, please? Just take a deep breath. Relax, calm down.
Do it.
There's no need for us to get upset with each other. It's not going to get us anywhere. It's okay to breathe. Okay. Listen, there's a lot of history between Section 1 and Section 2, and we don't need to bring all of that back up. And I would ask that we try, to the best of our ability, notwithstanding the past, to think about the situation as this is a new day. And it's a new equation. And you've got this crazy lawyer who came in from outside and is making suggestions that are rocking the boat, but that I still think are in the best interest of the neighborhood, which is why I like it. Okay, so with having said that, your point is very well taken. We need to be civil to each other. In meetings or otherwise, I'm begging of you, every member of this community, let's practice civility. We can agree to disagree. We can disagree with each other without being disagreeable to each other. It's just a matter of common courtesy and respect. Let's do our best to treat each other accordingly, including in these cases, because that's how we get to solutions. And what we're looking for here is win-win. Okay? That's what we're looking for. So I would ask that everyone forgive the past to the extent you have some animosity to a neighbor. I would ask of you, try and forgive that. This is a new day. Okay, so having said that,
What animosity are you talking about between 1 and 2? I've been in this neighborhood for 14 years. I've never had a fight with anybody in Section 2.
That's beautiful.
What are you talking about? There's no animosity for Section 2. And I don't know why you Section 2 people.
Please sit down.
I can't sit down. I have a problem with my back.
Okay, don't worry. Then please stand. Please stand.
Please stand.
What you just said again was said with a lot of passion. And
I don't understand where this animosity is coming from. I've never had any problems with Section 2.
thank you. We heard you. You don't have to repeat it. It's been heard loud and clear. We're listening.
You told me about how we have to let go of the past. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Please.
Now,
What happened?
if this doesn't apply to you, then you can disregard the message. I was conveying the message to people who do feel and have expressed some level of possible resentment or animosity or difficulty. And I'm saying that this is a new day. We're recovering from a disaster of historic proportions. And I'm making recommendations towards the two sections coming together because I believe that's in the best interest of the neighborhood overall. And I believe it's in the best interest of each of you, whether you live in Section 1 or Section 2. And I will be making and I admit my bias. I admitted my bias to the board at the outset. And I said, look, if you don't like these ideas, fire me. Because I can't come to you as a lawyer other than my best recommendations. And I want you to get an independent opinion if you disagree. That's always the way I practice with any client. So, but they are controversial ideas because they're suggesting changes, yes? So again, blame me for that, for rocking the boat, because that's primarily coming from me and my legal recommendations to you as an association and to those who are otherwise affected with Section 1. So, with that having been said, my perspective on the Section 1, Section 2 history, based on what I've learned, is there was an injustice that occurred, folks. And there probably have been subsequent injustices back and forth since the original one. But the original one is this. I know a little bit about real estate law. It's the primary area I practice in as a lawyer. And again, I co-own a real estate appraisal business. So I know a little bit about property valuation. And I know a little bit about neighbor development and how planned subdivisions are put together, and et cetera. Leilani's history is not typical. What happened was the developer didn't have their act together, frankly, the original developer. And they proceeded to establish the subdivision, and then they proceeded to market properties and sell them. And then they decided they wanted to have a planned community with CCM, community covenants and restrictions, and an association and home ownership fees. And the folks who already bought their property free and clear without any such restrictions. If you were in that situation, how would you feel?
What you see is what you get.
Yeah, right? And so I want some of you to understand, I've learned there are folks who still live in Section 1 from the original purchased from the original developer. How awesome is that, that they've been here that many years? But that's the history they come from, people. And if, I gotta tell you, I'll admit, I bought my property because it wasn't within a planned community, and I wanted to have the freedom to do what I wanted with it without having to get approval, right? So we do what we do for reasons that we do them. And so what I learned is some of these folks that bought in what is now Section 1 were what you would think of as pioneers. They came into the jungle with no infrastructure and no offer of any support, right? And they created a home. And then these folks had the audacity to come in and start asking for restrictions and then paying fees and this and that and the other. Okay, so what did the developer do? Instead of the developer taking a little bit of profit out of their pocket and paying for the improvements on behalf of what is now Section 1, instead of doing that, that's what a good, socially responsible developer would have done. But this is Hawaii, folks. Have you seen Hawaiian Acres? Have you seen Orchid Land Estates? Have you seen?
Don't even go there, my friend.
Right? This is Hawaii. So the developer abandoned Section 1. And to this day, the commonly owned area of Section 1 is owned by the bank. So to that extent, the developer hasn't paid off the bank. Now, so if you wanted to join, I'm going to take you through the legal process of that commonly owned land becoming your land. And I'm talking to all of you, Section 1 and Section 2. If that's the decision you make. My recommendation, but hey, I might lose the sales pitch. I take it. If that's what happens, that's what happens. It's your decision, not mine. But I'm promoting it because one subdivision is better for your values. And as a matter of governance, everyone who lives in that subdivision having a voice in the governance of the subdivision makes the most sense. You're going to have injustice. I mean, for those who still believe in the old American principles and the founding of America, you might remember it was all about taxation without representation, right? So you got to understand how the Section 1 folks feel. They don't have a voice right now. So keep that in mind, please. In light of that original injustice, I might be making recommendations such as, you can as an association approve grandfathering. You can as an association approve case-by-case exemptions so that that particular property owner, so long as they live at that property, that they're not subject to these and these restrictions, and that's agreed to by the community. Because we understand the past, we understand the original injustice, and we don't want to take that away from them. That's an option you have available to you. So I'm going to be trying to offer those kinds of case-specific win-win solutions towards seeing if we can get everyone together. Okay, that's my bias.
What Michael was saying was proposed several meetings ago at the Board of Directors meeting. We formed a committee with Andy Andrews, and I think we asked Steve, who's in Section 1, to help survey the people in Section 1. We sat down and we came up with some ideas about Section 1 to entice Section 1 to be a part of the LAC. One of the ideas was to pave the roads. And when some of the landowners in Section 1 were talked to by the committee going around Mark Palmeo and areas, we got comments like, over my dead body. I didn't move here to want to live on paved roads. Okay, that's one thing, folks. One of the things we suggested, Michael alluded to, was that we take Section 1 and we grandfather those people in. We grandfather the homes that they built, lived in for 14 years, like the young lady in the back there. And that property would be grandfathered in to the point they wouldn't have to adhere to the CC&Rs unless that property ownership changes. In other words, if he sells the property, the new owner would have to put in an apron to protect the roads. The new owner would have to make sure the house is 800 square feet. The new owner would have to have a 2-car carport or a garage. That's very simple. Most of the homes in Section 1 are already 800 square feet. Most of the people in Section 1 have a carport and a garage. The only thing you don't have right now is the paved roads to put an apron in, to protect the roads. One of the ideas we came up with to make it financially feasible for the people in Section 1 was you don't pay dues immediately. You pay the road assessment of $100 a year for 6 years, a total of $600 to have your road paved. I have 3 lots on my land. I paid $100 a year times 3 lots, or $1,800, and I'm happy as hell to have paved roads because I get the newspaper delivered to my doorstep, I get mail delivered, at least I used to my doorstep. You know, it's not really a problem. I have internet, I have Spectrum, I have cable TV, I have cable telephone, I have cable internet. You know, there were roads in Leilani that didn't get that. And Section 1, I drive down and I look at to my right and I see 10 newspaper boxes all at the end of Coolidge Street, let's say. I don't remember that. I just learned that, Kahukai doesn't go across Leilani. That is called Pueo. All these years, I thought it was Kahukai going from Leilani up to Malama. Now, people, look at those roads. We have people in Section 1 that use our paved roads to get to their property. And there's not a problem about that. My plumber, who should be at my house working right now because my pump was ruined by the SO2. Okay? He lives right at the edge of the pavement. Several years ago, he put a mailbox up for his property. He's in Section 1. Now, there's 10 mailboxes there, all next to his, because the people in Section 1 want mail delivery, so they put up a mailbox right at the end of the paved road. I don't know what to tell you people. I really don't. As far as the opinions we got, what was expressed, I think this young lady put it mildly. Section 1 needs to get organized and make a decision whether you want paved roads, whether you want the protection of security gates, because I think Section 2, the majority of residents are going to move forward with this and want their property protected. And you could be a part of that instead of putting the gate right by, what's his name's house? Betty used to live there, and her son-in-law, and they all left and moved to Florida. Right there where the sign says we have a leash law, that's where Section 2 starts. Instead of putting the gate there and keeping those people in Section 1 from using paved roads, from using the community park, from attending our picnics, it's just like there's people from Section 1 here. This is a special meeting for the people and property owners in Section 2. We didn't say to you at the door, you can't come in, you're not on our list for Section 2. We let you come in because we want you to be a part of the decisions we make, because it's going to affect you in the long run. Paving your roads is only going to make your property value that much more. It's a no-brainer, folks. For $600 total, you can have your roads paved, have newspaper delivered, have mail delivered, not have to walk down the end of your street to get it, or go to the post office to get it, or go to the 7-Eleven to buy your newspaper. Thank you.
So that is a great example of really specific opinions and suggestions from one of our board members who's got a background and knowledge in this area. You may not agree with everything he said. There's a number of hands that were raised, so I'd like to address each one because to the extent there are different opinions, that's great. The one thing I want to say about it is I really do believe that the details on this belong at the committee decision-making level right now, and I really recommend that as a membership you approve a committee for that purpose. I recommend you approve a committee for each of the 4 items that are listed under old business, and I recommend that before we end the meeting today, that those who are interested in participating on any one or more of those committees can give us your information so that we can reach out to you and get those efforts going. My concern is that we've got a monster to tackle here, and we can't do all of this at the board level. What we need is your expertise and input, right? And then come back to us with your best recommendations based on collaborating. It's especially of interest to me that Section 1 and Section 2 folks agree to serve on these committees. Because for every one of these issues, it affects both. Right? So that's what we're reaching out for. Now let me explain one other legal concern, and then I'll get to questions. And thank you for having your hands up there. You can put them down for the moment if you want, and then re-raise them, because I'll be calling for questions in a moment. There's nothing that prevents us from doing this on a step-by-step basis. And at the moment, let me give you the update on Leilani Avenue, okay, with regard to it. It's even titled in the agenda as acquisition of. As a matter of law, in order for Leilani Avenue's ownership to change from publicly owned to the LCA or otherwise, requires the approval of the county council. It is not something that the mayor's office alone can approve. As a result, it requires legislation. And so that is not something that's going to happen overnight. I have just opened the lines of communication on behalf of the LCA with the legal shop with the county, with Mr. Joe Camero-Mena, the corporation counsel, on the step-by-step process for how we might approach this. And in the communication that I just sent, I suggested that we begin with a memorandum of understanding, which the mayor's office does have the authority to sign, that would lay out temporarily how we will handle the management and oversight of Leilani Avenue, while the rest of the details can come back before the committee and get approval before anything permanent is done. Okay. But I will tell you this much as well with respect to this notion of obtaining control of or ultimately owning Leilani Avenue. The county, at the very first meeting we had with the mayor's office, actually brought this up. Because they looked at the map and they recognized and understood that in light of the lava disaster, at least for the foreseeable future, it's a cul-de-sac. Leilani doesn't lead to anywhere but private property, and it doesn't go to anywhere but your homes, your properties. That's it. And in light of that, it makes sense to the county to surrender and allow the neighborhood to have control over that. It makes sense to me logically. I guess I would appreciate a show of hands of whether just this idea, whether or not you agree ultimately with ownership, but whether this idea of at least for the short term, the LCA board, it being okay with you guys that at least for the short term, the LCA board works with the county with regard to the entrance to the neighborhood, Leilani Avenue. Is anyone opposed to that? Let me put it that way. If you're opposed to that, and if you have a question first, go ahead.
Well, I just want to know what would be the cost to the Leilani Community Association for the future maintenance of Leilani Avenue?
What would be the cost to the Community Association for future maintenance of Leilani Avenue is the question that was asked. And it's a legit question. I don't know the answer, and there might be folks here with better expertise than me.
We are maintaining the size of the road, cutting the grass, cutting back the weeds.
And I'm asking what the cost, have you done an assessment of the cost, the future cost of this?
No.
At this time, we have not.
No.
I can specifically address that. That is upcoming. My map has the amount of the length of streets. I have a map that has the length of all of our streets. I'm going to guess that Leilani Avenue is, at this time, well under 10% of our remaining streets. That's just pulling it out of my back pocket.
That's true, but how much usage, percent usage compared to all your other roads you have? My guess is, I'm just thinking that the maintenance cost is an important aspect to know before I make a vote on something like this, but I'm not even in the association. But that would be my question.
Yeah, just here that it was repaid less than 10 years ago. So yeah, we're going to have to repay it some year, not very soon. I'm sure we'll let it degrade to the same as Highway 130. Yeah, we'll have those numbers. You got to understand that we're just coming out of an emergency.
I get it.
A real disaster. Most of us board members are also in the flux of moving,
packing, unpacking, cleaning. There's only so many hours in the day. Unfortunately, I ran out a week before I got my chore list done.
I appreciate that, Jay. All I'm saying is, before I can give my opinion on it, I would want to know how much it's going to cost me.
I misspoke on the question. Let me
I
rephrase
think,
the question.
I think a better, and adding to her concern, I think the first thing that we should really know, what is it gonna cost us to purchase Leilani Avenue? I mean,
So the question, both the questions that were just asked had to do with costs. What would it cost to purchase? What would it cost to maintain? And we're talking about Leilani Avenue. I misspoke in the question that I was asking for in just informal show of hands on. I mean, it was much narrower than that. I wasn't trying to ask for some informal approval of anything long term. What I'm talking about is, over the next several weeks, the county wants to turn over the governance of the entrance of the subdivision to the subdivision. Okay? And this is just short term. This is just until you guys decide further what's next. And I'm asking, does anyone have any opposition to the board continuing under the authority they have to proceeding to make appropriate decisions on that, knowing that none of it's long term, and that anything that would be a permanent or long-term change is going to come back to the membership for voting approval. So if there's anyone opposed, that's who I want to hear from. So if you're opposed, if you don't mind raising your hand, I'd like your voice to be heard. Okay? Yes, sir.
I moved in section 1, and when I signed my deed, when he was presented to me, it was with the county owning LeilaniBoardMeeting, Avenue. I think a lot of people in both section 1 and 2 have that knowledge, and we felt secure in that it wasn't going to be taken away, it wasn't going to be gated off, it wasn't going to be changed from what it was because of that. And that change is something fundamentally different than what I originally bought. So I will be feeling that it's going to take away from the value of my property by turning that over to LPA.
Okay, so the commentary was essentially he's section 1 and bought his property with the understanding that Leilani Avenue is county road, and he expects it to remain that. And he doesn't want it to be blocked off. He wants it to continue to be open to the public. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. Who else has opposition would like to voice it?
I don't have opposition to Leilani being transferred. I think a lot of people think that their fees are going to go up within Leilani Estates. That's
Okay.
section 2.
Okay.
But you have to realize we just lost almost half a road, so we're not maintaining that anymore.
Yeah.
So the money that we would have spent there can go into Leilani Avenue. So it's not that, it shouldn't be that big of a distance.
Very good feedback. It was essentially that maybe that some people's feelings about it might surround anticipated outcomes regarding the resulting fees you might be paying later down the road. Specifically, maybe your HOA fees would go up. Let me speak to that briefly. Remember how I said we've got this opportunity through FEMA to get an SBA loan at 2% for 30 years? But there's no cheaper money than that, folks. To the extent you can amortize any costs over that kind of period, you're financing it out. As a result, there's no need to raise membership fees. You can do it with the money that's coming in. I do believe that the board, and the one thing I was going to give great credit, actually, to this subdivision and to this board, as well as prior boards. I've looked at lots of neighborhoods over the years, both from the appraisal perspective and the lawyer perspective. And good governance, when it comes to the funds, is a rarity. You guys, this board, and its predecessor boards, fantastic governance of the funds. And as a result, you're financially secure. And I don't know if you appreciate and realize, at least with respect to Section 2, the quality of the infrastructure that you enjoy. And you know, it's an exception for lower income. It's an exception for Plymouth. You know, so congratulate yourself for that. And to that infrastructure involves initially recovering the areas that were not lotto mandated, and then later dealing with the lotto mandated. But the good news about those recovery funds is they can assist with both. And so the financing out of it in a way that it's not going to have a big impact on your pocketbook is a real possibility. I can't make promises, we've got to sit down and crunch numbers. But given that opportunity, the opportunity to finance it out is gold. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, with all the digressions on this, I come up with a second question.
Yes, sir.
Let's get the first one out of the way.
Yes, sir.
The only thing I've heard from the board about what the county is willing to do is to give caretaker status to the HOA to Leilani. They are, so far, everything I've heard says that they are not willing to give ownership of the road. And if they're not going to give ownership of the road, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to put a gate in up there is a waste of money, because if the county is not going to give it up, they're going to want to take it back sooner or later.
So to make sure everyone heard that feedback, the decision of, I'm going to put it in a little different terms, and tell me if I get it wrong.
You know what I said.
Yeah.
I do have a question left.
Yes, sir. So the decision of whether to put a gate in and to spend the money on that, even if it ends up being agreed to by everyone that that's the long-term solution you want, that shouldn't go forward without approval of ownership of Leilani transferring as well, because you don't want the county to be able to come back and reassert control after having invested in all that infrastructure, right? Fairly said? Okay. Very valid, absolutely. So you can see these issues are tied together, right? There's a lot of cross-pollination between each of these issues that are here under whole business. And that's why I do believe at the committee decision-making level, that's what we need.
So you brought up a good point. So clarification, where does the end up to, Miley?
Before Miley. No, before Miley. Off Coologs.
Right on my two lots up the hill from Pula.
Okay. So there you go again, and that was a good clarification. So the county has to understand that section 1 and section 2 are totally different. So our section 2, unless there's an agreement to come together in section 1, we would put the gate there and then protect Ivy Carly and the law as well. Because otherwise they can get around the main line, right? From Miley.
So the suggestion has to do with essentially gating off, separating 1 from 2, and just letting 2 go forward with gating its own area. That's what I'm hearing you say,
Well,
right?
I'm just saying it's so complicated.
Well, if I'm hearing your comment, that's your comment, yes?
That's not even really do.
Okay, so that's your comment. Thank you for that feedback.
Going
What I'm
back
trying
to-
to do right now is allow an airing for anyone who's opposed to the idea of a gate up at the front entrance. At least in the short term, and I should have said, I misspoke, I said gate. I misspoke, put that aside, that's not what I meant to say. A controlled access point, right? Via private security or otherwise. At the entrance, continuing that under private control, private governance of the LCA, at least initially, so that then this membership process can move forward and longer term decisions be made. Because listen, what I'm trying to say to you, the county is itching to say, take it. And we can't be in a frozen state if we can't decide.
Are they giving it to us for free?
Well, are you talking about whether they would give us the road for free? The question was whether they would give us Leilani Avenue for free, meaning it wouldn't require any payment for it. My answer to you is that's exactly the position I would take as your lawyer should we get to that point. Okay? But we're not anywhere near that point yet. Let's understand where we are, everyone. I want to remind everyone.
Going back to...
Hold on. Please listen. Let me remind everyone where we are, and then I promise to get your feedback. Where we are is no decisions on any of these issues have been made, and what I'm requesting out of this meeting is that we go away with a committee for each one that will further work on this between now and the next meeting and report back. That's the request, okay? And what we're trying to do is conduct business on all of these issues right here at the board level. And what I'm saying is that's not going to work because there's too much detail that's got to be worked through. So let's reserve some things for the committee level, okay? But your commentary is welcome. But where I'm trying to keep us at the moment is I'm trying to get a clear voice of everyone who doesn't like the idea of the LCA board, at least in the near term, contracting for that controlled access while we move forward together. And if you don't like that idea, I want you to explain why, and so that everyone can hear it. Because I think then we're going to probably ask for your formal approval one way or the other out of this meeting. Because the board does have to move forward under its emergency powers, and the county is going to be walking away, and they have a fiduciary responsibility to the neighborhood. They can't abandon their duties. So that's why we're in this pickle, and that's why I'm asking the question. So go ahead.
Securing gating Leilani Estates. Under old business of securing gating Leilani Estates, I'm wondering what the board is envisioning happening at Miley Street. Where Miley meets 130. Or Malama Street, yeah, Malama Street.
Block it off. We're gonna block it off.
Block it off.
Yes.
At the moment, I believe there's a barricade in place.
There's a barricade in place.
Okay. What is your question?
Would there be a gate there? I'm not sure the fire department's going to allow.
Okay, well, again, that's sort of that commentary of whether or not a gate can go there. Hold on. Allow me.
Mike, all you're trying to say is, are we willing to pay for private security coming from 130 Leilani just like the
Yeah, so allow me to restate that, and then we're going to do a vote, because people are not listening to what I'm asking for in terms of commentary, and you're going off into levels of detail that aren't
ahead on the agenda.
No, sir, we're not. Please listen to the question I asked, and anyone, I want to give one more opportunity for a full voice from everyone before we ask for a vote. The question that I'm asking specifically has to do with just the next few weeks. Just the next few weeks, nothing beyond that. And specifically that the LCA board continue under its emergency authority to accept responsibility for control and access to the neighborhood at the entry point. Okay? If you're opposed to that, then I want to hear from you, and I want you to explain to the membership why before you're asked to vote. Okay? So if you're opposed to that, please raise your hand. Yes, sir.
I make a motion we should vote already, because it's just going
Okay,
back
so
and
let's-
forth, back and forth.
Yeah,
Motion
good
to
one.
vote.
Yeah.
Hold on. We're going to do this democratically. Yes, sir, back here.
Yeah, section 1, so then should we, I'm just talking to name myself, section 1. If the board is going to pay for that, so I can't get it right from that, right? So that's where our conversation has to start.
Okay, the question is, yeah, let's be polite to each other, please. The question is very simple.
Your mouth.
The question is very simple and it's legitimate. The board would be undertaking some costs in hiring private security to take over that access point. Right now, the private security is not being paid for by the association. The county is picking up the tab. And as I mentioned, that's a 3-week contract that I don't know if they're going to renew it or what. I'm in communications with them to find out. So there would be some expense involved, and the question is a legitimate one. Would the costs of that be passed on ultimately to Section 1 folks as part of this process? Do I understand that to be your question? Yeah. Legit question. My answer is I don't think so, because this is legitimately an expense associated, well, hear me out. Legitimately an expense associated with recovery of the neighborhood, recovery from the disaster. There's no question in my mind it would be covered under the FEMA SBA process that we're going to be pursuing. And as I've mentioned over and over again, any of that money is financed over a period of 30 years. There's not going to be any need to transfer or pass any upfront costs on to anyone with respect to all of those expenditures. Yes.
Question, I have 2 questions. One, I want to know if you want to have my vote in this informal vote, as I'm a Leilani one person. And my second question is, I'm okay with LCA continuing with this emergency security over the top of Leilani. That's fine, if you can put it, that's great. But I want to know, does it mean that that means you're automatically going to keep the barrier at the top of Leilani, because that's my street, and I haven't been able to come in there since like May, whatever it was.
So the question is whether the board would overtake responsibility for the barrier to entrance to Malama Street. And that's actually a legit question. In terms of what I'm asking for approval of right now, as a short term, no, that's not within the scope. And the reason why? That barrier was put in place by the county.
Right.
Okay, it's going to be a county decision if and when to remove it. Right? We don't have the authority. The association doesn't have the authority. So that's not an issue that's within the scope right now. Okay, but great question.
And the first question I had was, do you want my vote or not?
Oh, and the first question was whether Section 1 folks should vote. Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to first request a vote of folks who live in Section 2 and who have therefore voting, and this is just informal show of hands. And then I'd like to separately ask the Section 1 folks for their input so that we have a clear sense of whether there's a difference in rates of approval between the two. That would give us some information on how much more communication might be needed, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Let's vote.
Okay, and so any more commentary before we vote? We got a motion to vote. Yes, sir.
I've got a question, and it ties in with Section 1.
Yes, sir.
And actually, Section 1 is a very simple one, can be worked out. All it takes is either agreement or disagreement, and either barriers in or out.
Right.
What about the section of Malama between Pomaikai and I believe Kahukai or the next street? There are 29 lots in there, 24 of them south of Malama, 5 of them on the north side that are not within the HOA. What's going to be done with them?
So,
We don't know. How's that gonna?
I'm missing where you're specifically.
When you look at the map of the LCA, you see that it that section of Malama that is broken.
Oh, yes, there is a section that is not completed.
Right. There are
From Maikai to Moku.
There are 29 lots on the south side. There are 29 lots total.
Yes.
24 of them on the south side of Malama, 5 of the square lots on the north side that are not within the LCA.
They, in fact, are. They are, yes, they
Your
are.
map shows them as being.
Are you speaking of the map on the wall in the office?
The one you have online.
That Annie
My
Ernest
friend,
owns
my
8 of
friend.
those lots. Yeah.
Pardon?
Annie, a lady named Ann Ernest, who used to live in Alaska, has a house right at the end of Moku. In fact, we paved
Yeah,
it.
she's got, I think, 3 or 4
We
lots
paved it
south
so
and
she
1
can
north.
access her driveway. She has pavement, and we put a dead end sign there, and 8 of those lots were owned by Annie Ernest. On the right side, as you're looking towards 130, those lots are inaccessible. There's a huge hole there that the previous owner was selling cinder at until we chased him out of there. And for us to fill up that hole would be an unsurmountable task.
I'm going to put it this way. In looking at the county maps, the county tax maps, every one of those lots has an owner.
Right.
And
They're all in the line.
on the Pomaikai end, 3 lots.
yeah,
are owned by someone.
so I appreciate all this detailed request about whether particular lots are within 1 or 2. Not necessary to resolve that right now today. That's a committee level discussion. Okay? Let's reserve that for committee
As
level.
long as we're considering Section 1, we need to consider those lots.
Absolutely, no question. The commentary is you got to have absolute clarity on which lots are Section 1 and which lots are Section 2 and moving forward. Completely agree with you, sir, 100%. Now, let's get back to the vote. Because again, we're not getting people are all over the map. Okay, one more, Dennis, go ahead.
Say the county pulls out security, we don't go for security, does that mean Leilani is just open for everything?
The question is, if the county pulls out its paying of security and you guys don't vote for security, is the road then just open to everyone? The answer is yes.
Yes.
It's a monthly cost to
In
us.
our area,
A lot of money.
I have a bunch of cars going in, honestly, and people walking all over people's property. It's too hurtful and it's disrespectful.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. President, I make a motion, we should vote.
Okay, so we have a,
I second
We have-
President, let's vote.
we have a vote, we have a motion, we have a second to vote on the motion. Jay?
Okay, Section 2. Those opposed to Leilani Community Association taking over short-term control of Leilani Avenue. Let's see the hands. For security. 2. Now for Section 1 attendees. Okay, Section 2 approved.
Security at 1:30.
I also have some property. Nine property.
So Jay, the
I think they gotta be here to vote. If they're not here, they lose the privilege. They gotta be here to vote.
Yeah.
I got 25 people in Honolulu. I got another 50 in Kauai. They gotta be here to vote.
This is true. This is true. This is true. It's legit.
We're counting individuals here.
Yeah.
We're
So
not
once again,
counting
just raise your hand if you're
lot
okay.
votes, property votes.
Clarify that to keep the security on Leilani 130.
Correct.
Yes.
This isn't temporary to keep the security on Leilani 130. Mind the board, a contract for that should account for that. Yeah, I'm counting like 33 approvals, and I think there's 2 no's. Okay, so with respect to association business, we have by our count 33 approvals and 2 no's. That's an overwhelming approval. Therefore, we will move forward on the motion. Thank you for your was now, for information purposes, we have to do this in accordance with the governance process, okay? Now, for information purposes, we absolutely want to know how the Section 1 who are here represented feel about this. And so, if you guys don't mind, if you don't mind standing so that we can distinguish you from Section 2, and all of you, please, because then I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you're either in favor or against, so that we have a sense of your proportions on how you feel about this. There's some. There's a good number.
Who is standing for now? I tried to talk many times and hasn't been put down. So let's just stop for 1 second. Now, I'm all for the gate because the gate's the only thing that's going to bring any of our values back. Okay, so I'm all for the gate.
Can we, sir, I promise to let you speak. Can we get this vote done first?
Well, I want to vote with these people, but I don't know what you're saying because I can't hear you.
Okay, this is for approval. How do you feel as a member, as a resident of Section 1, about the board having been approved to move forward temporarily and contract for private security at the entrance to this entire subdivision, Highway 130 and Leilani, as a temporary thing until further action by the membership? The membership here in attendance overwhelmingly approved this, and so the board is going to go forward on that basis. We want feedback from the Section 1 folks on how many of you like that decision, how many are opposed. Okay? Once we get that feedback, then any other commentary you want to give, you're going to be welcome to give. Is that okay? Okay, perfect. So with that in mind, if I can ask of the folks here standing, and thank you for being here, by the way, how many of you are in agreement with the decision that the membership has made?
And it's the temporary security.
Temporary.
Leilani,
Correct.
130.
Correct. So we've got a unanimous, yes? Okay. So let's make that part of the record, that those members of those Section 1 who are here today. So let me make my own personal commentary in light of this. Folks, this is what I mean about this is a new day. Look at what just happened. We basically got near unanimous approval on something, despite all of our difference, and it's a very significant thing. It's about access and security for the entrance to your subdivision. Congratulations to you. Now, have we covered the, let me put it this way. Are there any other questions relating to any of the old business items? Because I think we've covered each one in a fair amount of detail. Right?
I just want to make a little bit of comment. Why are we discussing security gate? Well, there's a tsunami and it's blowing in. And we've already got at least one tour operator functioning from within Leilani Estates. If we don't have security, we aren't going to like the way things go.
Get a gun.
Additionally, we have got a quotation. Mark Cavanillo has gotten a quotation for putting up essentially guardrail barriers at the end of all of our short streets that will have a sign on them as well, stating private property, keep out, danger of lava, and all this, and we'll quote the ordinance that the county uses on their signs. Now, we're ready to move on that. The board, I can't remember if we passed approved, yeah. All right, so this is, at this time, this is held up only by getting what ordinance that the county is going to use, because we want to use the same thing. This will effectively, until such time as as civil defense drops the mandatory evacuation zone classification for the lava, which currently is at 150 feet back. They have issued some authorizations for residents who had lots taken by the lava to actually go to their property area. But other than that, no one else should. Well, if we get 500 or 1,000 tourists a day streaming in there, where are they going to park? Well, they're going to destroy the shoulders of our road. They're going to walk all over your property. This is why we're talking about security. An alternative to gating might be we run our own, hire our own security. I don't know if you're aware, but it takes 5 people full-time to actually staff one person 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Roughly $150,000 a year for one. Somebody's got to pay for that. That bleeds our account pretty fast. That's why we're looking at a gate, which we do once, and we pay a little power to run it. That's about all I've got at this very moment. Turn it back to Mike.
Thank you for that. So here's questions, anything relating to any of the old business items. If you have questions, further discussion you want to have, this is a great time for that. And then we'll move into new business and member statements. Any other questions relating to old business? Who's had their hand up? I think you've had the hand up in August, so back there.
Yeah, I just have a practical question that got raised by a couple of people, which is all of this stuff with Leilani, whether it be a gate or private security or whatnot, seems like it could be moved if the county decides to remove that barrier in Malama, because you would have everyone blocked, on one street, and they're just going to go half a mile down the road and come back in. So whatever decisions we decide to make on that need to be premised on whatever we decide to do with Malama Street, because otherwise we're wasting money for no reason.
Yeah, very valid point, which is that Malama Street has this barrier that the county has put up. But any decisions you make should be contingent on whether the county is going to maintain that barrier, or if it's going to be taken over privately, when and how. And that's a very, very valid point. So I'll be sure and bring that up and include it in our negotiations with the county in regard to any memorandum of understanding, etc., in regard to the neighborhood taking over its own access ultimately.
I don't think that there are several houses, private properties in the lava zone, in Leilani 1, between 130 and like about Cooler, and that barrier cuts them off, and I don't think that they're part of Leilani 2. Those houses. I don't know if that makes a difference.
What you're talking about, Annie, is basically if you take the end of the pavement. Now, the end of the pavement on Kahukai, the first time Kahukai was paved, they made a mistake and they went about 150 feet beyond Section 2, the end of Section 2. I wish Mark Halneal was here. He was the one that contacted the barrier company that you see, barrier update under new business. Mark has already had the people come out, give us an estimate of installing double high barriers at the end of the pavement, and there's 14 streets that will get that barrier. And the total cost, I believe, was $2,400. $24,000 to have it done. They would install it, put the metal post in the road, concrete them in, put the double high barriers up, and that would keep people from coming down. If the county does remove its concrete barriers at the top of Malama, they can only go so far. They could come down to the paved road and would stop. The same on the end of Kahukai. The people could access Kahukai in Section 1, but when they get to Section 2, there'd be a double high barrier to prevent any further movement.
But we're not going to be in a position where you put up your barrier and there's still a barrier at 130 because then.
No, no, that's a county barrier, like it's been alluded to by Michael already. The county's got to make a decision to remove that barrier. We don't have the equipment to do it. We don't have the say how to do it and permission to do it. They'll have to do it. But like I said, the barrier will protect the tour companies Jay alerted to. In fact, I notified him because we have one company that has a website. I won't mention the name, but he's contacted, he has a website, and he works primarily with the cruise passengers. And he's advertising. I have a four-wheel drive truck, air conditioned. One person can sit in the front, and 3 people can sit in the back seat of the truck. And I will take you into Leilani, and I will show you the lava, and I will, explore Leilani.
I get it, but what I'm thinking of is in the future, if you guys go ahead and put up a barrier there at my street, Lalama, where the pavement ends, and then there's a gated thing up at the top, even though I go out to 130, then when I need to visit somebody, one of my friends in Leilani, then I need to get their permission from them to come in through the pavement.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure who had their hands up the longest.
Again, my competitor for like.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, you have
I had to put it down.
Yeah,
I put it down.
my apologies. You
I'm
have
good.
absolutely, it's been you.
And
Please
I'm
go
much more
ahead.
patient than I was the other night.
No worries, please go ahead.
If the barrier comes off the end of the llama, no one's safe again. If you're gonna gate it, it needs to be gated as a community. Because everyone's gonna park on our dirt road where there's not even enough room to get through. Okay, so unless it stays gated at the highway where you can't park, will the police ever police anything? Which is slim to none anyway, okay? So unless that's gated, everyone's gonna drive into Malama, park on every dirt road there is and walk that road and walk in anyway. Okay, so that's that. I maintain my own road. I live right on Kula. I live at the dirt. I've spent over $2,000 fixing that road for the last 5 years. Okay, because there's a stream of water that comes down there and washes it all away. And every 8 months, I repack the road, regrade it, all the neighbors say thanks. I got over 700 customers in Leilani. I'm a business owner here, landowner in Leilani. We should all be part of Leilani. We all started off as Leilani, no matter Leilani 1, Leilani 2. 600 was nothing. But when everyone went door to door, they didn't explain quite the cost or anything, or the outcome of what you were doing. You just asked if we'd be part of it. And of course people, well, I'm not on paved road, I'm not getting my lawn mowed. Why would I be part of it? Which 110 was never a problem. I would pay 110 years ago, it never mattered to me. Okay? I never even knew. I bought my property from the mainland, never even knew about the rules until after I bought it. Okay, it wasn't a concern of mine when I bought it. So it never mattered.
So a lot of wonderful feedback. I'm going to summarize it if I may. In support of all the arguments and reasons for a couple of things. One, you got to include 1 with 2 in regard to these security concerns. If we're going to go forward with gating and securing the community, you got to contemplate both. You've got Malama Avenue you've got to deal with. Otherwise, you've got an open sea right there, right? With no security. So very good points made. My personal opinion is I agree with you, sir. That's why I suggested to this board at the outset exploring 1 and 2 coming together. Right. So we're really delighted to hear, as a resident of 1, who's done so much to do your own roads, etc., as you explained, really, really delighted to hear that you're in support of the concept. That's what I was hoping. I'd like that dialogue to continue. Offline, I'm going to facilitate requests for membership in committees on each of these topics. For anyone who wants to be part of that process, as we're going to take this to the committee level next, please just communicate that, let us know, and we'll be sure and notify you of committee meetings, communications, etc. And then the committees are each going to report back to the board for recommendations, and any recommendations will then come out to the membership for approval before finalization. Okay? That's what you can expect on each of these whole business issues moving forward.
Several years ago, we had an unfortunate incident where someone on one of the unpaved roads became ill, severely ill, and the ambulance and the fire truck couldn't access his home. the fire department and the ambulance people came to our board meeting. Like I said, I think maybe the only member of the board back then might have been Kurt. But they approached the board and they asked the board if we would cut back all the brush along the dirt roads and the trees that overhang into the roads and stuff like this. And we told them we'd have to go to the property owners and ask them if we could do that. Because basically, they were in Section 1 and we had no control over the situation. We approached the people on that particular street and they were very adamant about cutting back the bush, cutting back the trees, and so nothing was ever done. So we're very hopeful that another incident doesn't occur where an ambulance or a fire truck, God forbid, a house catches on fire, and they can't get to it because of the overhang, because of the shrubbery, because of the wideness of the road. I mean, you know, this is one of the things why we want Section 1 to join. So we can improve your property, basically, by maintaining the sides of the road, by paving the roads, by making everything accessible to you that people in Section 1 or Section 2 have.
I do believe it's a win-win, but let's take it to the committee level. And everyone who's passionately interested in this 1 and 2 discussion, please understand, we're going to take it to committee level, we're going to proceed with deliberations at that level, and then come back with recommendations, okay? Yes?
Thank you. I just want to say, I get 3 minutes, but I'll try and
Please go ahead.
I would like everyone to be notified. I've only attended one board meeting, and so this is my second, and I think both Section 1 and Section 2 should be notified, and I don't know how we were notified. I didn't know that it was really just a gate that was talked about, because I had other ideas. And so, I'm so thankful to Mr. Golden here for his group and communication that I know more about because of his, through Next Door Neighbor. That has been so helpful for me, and thank you very much for that. And I think, yeah. I'd like to find out if we could all be notified about what's going on, so there's no he said, she said division. I love Leilani. I love the whole 9 yards. So please notify us all if it's through the same avenue or email or whatever. Please notify 1 and 2 so we know what's going on. I have several other things, but we'll start with
Okay,
how many lots remaining? On and on. I have many questions, but.
Well, no, I don't want to interrupt you, but I just wanted to quickly respond to your request that everyone be notified, both Section 1 and Section 2, and kept informed. I also have a legal concern relating to this that I shared with the board, and it is that there's been massive displacement of the property owners, even within Section 2, because of this disaster. And if we want the actions of this association to be valid going forward, then there really does need to be a due diligence process of ensuring that we have everyone's latest contact information and they're being given notice of meeting, especially any meeting that's going to call for a vote on anything long-term, so that we get that done first before any such vote is requested. And so I do anticipate that the board will be approving such actions at sort of the administrative detail level, of in effect going through the membership roles and reaching out to ensure we've got your latest contact information. In that regard, Greg Armstrong has observed that there were vast attempts to get email addresses and inconsistent results, and some folks not wanting to communicate by email. And so the only classic approved process under the bylaws is regular traditional snail mail. And so that's, you know, unless and until that changes, that under the bylaws, that's going to be the official notification process. It's not the best way today. And so I want to invite everyone to, first, official source of information. Where do you go? LeilaniEstates.org. Okay. LeilaniEstates.org, the content is under the governance of the board and the association. So you want to know the latest from the board's mouth, that's your source. If you're looking at Nextdoor or you're looking at the Facebook group or any of the other social media that may be out there, it's wonderful that they're out there. They're not the official communication avenue for the association, LeilaniEstates.org. However, I've explained to the board this need for outreach. We've got wonderful community leaders, and if you don't mind me calling you out, Robert Golden among them, who have reached out and communicated with both 1 and 2 folks and done informal meetings and grassroots efforts that have been fundamentally moving things forward. So community activism, I applaud every one of you who do it. Please keep at it. It's beautiful. But to the extent you might be willing to share contact information that's been shared with you, with the approval of the folks you've been communicating with, for the board to update its records to ensure we have everyone's latest email address, for example, I would encourage such an effort. We want to improve our communication protocols. We want to ensure that when changes or requests come out from the board, folks are notified. And so I don't have all the details of how that's going to be implemented yet. And there's practical reason why. We really need to be back in the community center before we take that on, right?
Yeah.
Right now, the association, the board is displaced, right? We need to get the community center up and running again, and then that's the top priority project from my perspective as a lawyer. So that's coming. In the meantime, I've been in communication with some folks who moderate some of the social media or in administrator capacity. I'd like to invite you to reach out to me or a board member if you have questions coming to you in your social media thread that maybe need board input. The board traditionally will not directly comment. To the extent board members comment, they're typically doing it in their individual capacity and giving their personal opinion. There's no such thing as one board member that speaks for the entire board or that speaks for the association. That's simply not true. Not even our wonderful president here, Jay. None of us have that legal authority. So understand that. If you're hearing from any individual board member, you're hearing from them as an individual. Okay? All right, so with all of that in mind, you had some additional commentary and I cut you off. What else did you want to add?
That's good, it's late.
You're good.
It's late.
Okay, yes sir, the red shirt.
Rob, I'm on Alpine Street, just wanted confirmation, because I know what I heard, and I want assurance that it doesn't happen. Board acting on an emergency order, and actions are non-binding. If you do something on Leilani Avenue, as far as taking it over from the county or the county giving, I want assurance on the record that if you get for a vote of the membership.
Yes, what was just approved, the request was for anything long-term, if I'm going to translate a little bit maybe. What was just approved in today's meeting was for a temporary period until we can go through the governance process for membership approval of anything long-term, giving the board authority to go ahead and contract privately if necessary to maintain the access security. That was approved today. The request was, this doesn't mean anything long-term, right? Anything long-term is going to have to go through the governance process and membership approval, right? The answer is yes, that is true. You are correct. Did that answer your question?
I take that as assurance that the board will not take over Leilani Avenue without the vote of the membership.
The specific assurance the board will not take over, and I'm going to rephrase it. The association will not take over Leilani Avenue without the approval of the membership. The answer is that's correct.
Thank you.
One question to each of the board members. Are any of you opposed to Leilani 1 merging with Leilani 2 as a person?
Okay, my point
Just
is,
so I can hear your.
as a neighborhood watch person, I'd love to have Leilani 1 in the fold so that I can cruise around their streets when they get them paid to make sure their property. I take it personal when somebody's house gets broken into. I think a few people know me. I drive a black car, I drive a silver car, I'll drive anything around here to help keep you guys protected. So if we can bring Leilani 1 in reasonably with Leilani 2, it seems like it's a win, like Michael was saying.
Very good. I just want to know how deep the opposition goes.
Well, that's a great question. The question was, how does the board feel about 1 and 2? And here's my answer to you, sir. It was the board that approved exploring this in the first place. So that tells you how they feel.
But did the board explore it because they're lacking 2/3 of Leilani 2 and need the money?
No.
You know what I mean? That's what I'm wondering.
No way.
Because I wouldn't want to be cut out to the dirt road that I don't use. You know? So.
There's no profit motive, sir. It's going to be a cost.
Right.
Right.
We stop and think. We
Yeah.
propose taking over section 1, paving your lots. And all you're gonna do is pay $600 a year for each lot you own. Right now,
it's costing almost $250,000 per mile for paving. $250,000 per mile. You're going to pay $600. Let's say there's 20 lots at the end of Kabukai, between Leilani and Kabukai where it's paved. There's actually 56 properties affected along Kabukai. 56 times 600 over 6 years is $36,000, and it's going to cost us $250,000 to pave it.
So that's in concrete terms, it answers your question. Leilani 2 is going to invest in Leilani 1.
Right, but 600 in that, I mean, I pay over that.
We're not asking that you, we're not asking that you pay these costs because of the advantage of the FEMA funds. We can amortize this over time, and in the process, improve the whole. Basically, do what the original developer should have done, folks. From my perspective, that's what should have happened. Instead, they line their pockets, okay? And we want to right that wrong from the past. And I think we can do it. I think we can do it as a neighborhood. And I'd like you to keep working on it. And again, we're taking it to committee level next, okay? All right. More commentary. Yes, yes, sir. The one behind you now. He's been waiting longer.
I'm speaking for Libby, who lived in Leilani and lost her house.
Yes.
I would remind you that what you have down here in the cul-de-sac, which is also trapped, and that the entrance to Leilani is in the lava zone. There's no other way out. And my suggestion would be when you're talking to the county, that you look for an alternative exit route. If put in just an exit gate, that would be a wonderful thing to do. No entrance to that, but there needs to be another exit from Leilani.
The point being made, Leilani is now a cul-de-sac, the entirety of Leilani, and in the negotiations with the county, among other things, we really need to see, can there be an alternative exit established, right? So that there's not only one way in and out. That's a public safety concern, it's a legit concern. Thank you for that feedback. Yes, ma'am.
What was the amount of loan we could get?
We could get, I understand up to, what is it, $2 million.
Because the Elko has a dirt road that borders the edge of Leilani, and we can probably get them to give us access to that road as emergency access.
Okay. So one of our experts here, a board member, explained that Elko has a road that provides alternative access. We're not able to negotiate with them. So thank you for that feedback. I'll put that on my to-do list as something to do. Yeah, we're running over time. Any other member commentary before we wrap this? Yes, sir.
This is in regards to my conversation with Jay. I just want to get it out here in the open. When they said, so is it signage or is it a road block at the end of every street that has a lot? I just want clarity.
So the question is, are we talking about signage or are we talking about an actual road block?
Signage. That's what I'm just trying to picture exactly what you're doing.
Well,
You wouldn't need a roadblock if there's lava block in the road.
You don't need a roadblock. I don't want one. I don't want a roadblock.
But you would have to put a sign saying dead end, lava.
Right. I'm just asking for clarity.
The current plan is to put an actual roadblock made out of guardrails and posts with a sign on it to, in accordance with the county's requirement as part of the mandatory evacuation zone.
So it's going to look like the end of Leilani Avenue.
That's correct. That's correct.
Why?
Because the county will require us.
On private roads?
Well, can I speak to that? Jay is saying the county will require that. In effect, the issue here is this. I don't, and this was discussed in social media, and it went crazy, and it's not always the most productive way.
I was to come here and get a straight scoop, so I'm here.
The issue is this: by putting traffic blockades up at the end of the roads where they're lava overrun, so you can't drive it any farther, there was somehow an assumption made or an implication that that means that the owners of property beyond that barrier don't have access to their property. That's inaccurate. That's inaccurate. This is about public notice that the road ends. This is about public safety for somebody who's driving at night, and if you're like me, I don't have hair anymore, and once the lights go out and I'm driving with my headlights, I've got glare, and I can't see, and I need good signage so that I don't drive into a lava wall because I don't see it. So this is about public safety, and it's in my legal recommendation to protect the liability of the association against possible injury that these roads need to be properly marked. This is part of the due diligence the association exercises under its fiduciary responsibility. But it shouldn't be misinterpreted. We do anticipate future vision where the roads can be restored. Obviously, when that work goes underway and the roadway is restored, the barrier is removed. So don't think this is anything long-term. This is what we have to do for now because of the current circumstances. Yes, sir.
Okay, so for the people that have lots that are right there, whether they're covered or not, so like mine's covered, but it's like about 5 feet basically. I can still get to my lot. I can still use it.
Yes.
I don't want to block the road light because that's going to prevent me from physically getting to my lot. It's like right there, but you're going to put a roadblock.
Well, so the specific concern this gentleman has is, I understand he's saying he's on the edge of the lava. The lava has inundated. It's a few feet thick, and he would not want to bury.
It's even with the...
Okay, so you don't want to bury there because you want to be able to drive onto the lava and park on it. Okay, I understand that request. As lawyer for the association, I would say bad idea, sir. Listen, that's not a road, right? It's lava, and I don't think the association can take on the liability of people driving onto the lava. There needs to be proper assessment and rebuilding of the roads, and that will come. But between now and then, I think they're making the right move to mark where the road ends as a matter of public safety and protecting the association from liability. So your comments are well taken, sir, but you've got an individual concern that's in conflict with those of the community interests. And I have to advocate for the community interests.
I just want to say, if you have a roadblock, and if you have a vehicle that is even capable of doing it, you're just going to go around.
Sir, I can't speak to what you may choose to do as a private citizen. I'm giving you the reasons. Yeah, your feedback is great. Thank you so very much. But I've given you all the reasons why, and it is not a prohibition on access to your property. That's the bottom line. Okay? That's the bottom line answer. So please take that answer and run with it. Right? Okay. Is there any last commentary? Yes, sir.
I make a motion, we close the meeting.
Yes. Well, there's a motion to close the meeting. We do have one announcement, please, before we shut down the meeting. Please hold on.
Okay, I've got a couple of things to close on. Number one, community center will be open Monday. We did get our power restored. Kim will be returning to the office. And for those of you that want more email contact from LCA, I would suggest, without stacking up too many behind the window, drop in and give Kim your email address and or phone number. We will add it to our database. Secondly, Moku and Moama, street repairs. I will be meeting with a gentleman tomorrow morning to do an assessment and get a quotation. So we will be moving forward with this fairly soon. It just has taken a little time. We had to wait for things to calm down. Had we jumped in too soon, fixed the road, and something shifted, somebody got hurt, oops, we don't want that. So we feel a little more confident at this time. Final announcement, October 28th, we're going to have a potluck picnic, hamburgers and hot dogs at the Pavilion Community Center, starting at noon. Section 1 is invited, yes. Yeah. We assume that out there with unimproved streets, you still cook.
I never knew we weren't invited. I've always been at the Pavilion or movie night or whatever.
Yes.
So I never knew there was a restriction. We've been very nice.
Okay, we're now just a hair past our bewitching hours, so.
We've got a motion to adjourn, Jerry.
Seconded that motion. We will close the meeting.
Anybody wants to help clean up, please.
At 12:17.
I got it.